Hey, welcome back, part 6. So I'm going to talk about my double mastectomy. And I don't feel great today. It's Monday, and I had an appointment that I had to go to this morning, so I put some makeup on. So I don't want to waste an opportunity when I have makeup on to do a video. So I know I should do a video when I don't have makeup on, and I probably will at some point. I'll probably do a couple of them because it's not about me. This is about the walk that I had with God during my cancer trials. But everybody wants to look nice, and so anyway, I have also put on lipstick. I'm not a lipstick girl, but everybody said in the video, in my live video, you look so pretty with that lipstick on. And so my mom and my grandmother always said, you should never leave the house without lipstick on. My mother doesn't. My mother wears lipstick every day. So I put a little bit of lipstick on, makes you have a little bit of color. But anyway, not feeling great today, but I wanted to do part 6. So January 29th of 2002, I had to be at the hospital at some unearthly time that morning, very early in the morning. And I will tell you, I was scared out of my mind. I had not had a lot of surgeries at that point in my life. I was 35. I had had a pretty major back surgery when I was 19, and I had a gallbladder. I had my gallbladder removed, and I had an emergency C-section when Alec was born. But other than that, and they were doing a radical mastectomy. They were taking everything. They were going to take a lot of lymph nodes under my arms. But you just think they're cutting off your breast. And yes, it bothered me. I was young. Of course, I care what I look like. But I was so scared when I woke up. I kept thinking, what is it going to feel like? The pain is just going to be awful. And I don't know. I was very scared. So I was shaking all over. I just remember shaking so much. And my mom was here with me, and she and Don had taken me to the hospital. And I remember that I wanted to talk to them, but every time I tried to open my mouth to say something, this lump in my throat, I could not even talk. It was a morning I don't want to relive ever. So when they got me back to pre-op, they saw how scared I was, how I was not doing well. And so they told me they were going to give me something to help calm me down a little bit. And so they did. And if you know anything about me on medication, it tends to, a little tiny bit of medication affects me a lot. And when they gave me that, all my cares went away. And I'm going to tell this. Don's going to kill me. He was so embarrassed. So they had let Don come back there with me, and they gave me this medicine, and I am just high as a kite. And I was like, Don, oh my gosh, you're never going to see my breast again. You better to come say bye to him. And okay, for those of you that don't know my husband, he can be pretty quiet. Now, once he gets to know you, he opens up, but he's pretty quiet. He's a guy's guy. He's not, real comfortable around a lot of women. I mean, he likes to talk about guns and, that kind of thing. But so for me to do that, I was like, come say bye to him. You can kiss him if you want. And I'm pulling my gown out, and he's like, it's okay, Tracey. It's okay. I'm like, no, really, you're never going to see him again. You need to say bye to him. And the nurses are dying. At this point, my doctor's in there. They are laughing so hard. And one of the nurses was like, you might as well go over there and do it. She's not going to stop until you do. He walks over, and I wish that I was more in my right mind so I could really remember what his face looks like. But I was like, go ahead, kiss him bye. He was like, no, I'm just going to tell him bye. So, yes, he was so embarrassed. When he left, he went back out to the waiting room. My mom's out there. She had seen what kind of shape I was in, and just how scared I was. And she was out there in the waiting room just, praying for me. And she said, "How is she?" And Dawn said, "She is feeling no pain and she is just fine. And I assure you, she is not scared of anything right now." So, so they took me back. I will say that I, in my head, thought they are going to get in there and they are going to find that they made a mistake and I don't have cancer. Again, that denial was so strong. I just could not believe I had breast cancer, and I just knew they were going to get in there and find out they had made a mistake. And so when I woke up, my mom was standing there, and the first thing I asked her, I said, "Are my breasts gone?" And my mom had such a sad smile, and she said, "Yes, honey, they are." And, I knew then it wasn't a mistake. I knew that I really did have breast cancer. So that was more so than anything. Truly, my chest really didn't hurt. It was more under my arms. They had basically taken, if you get grossed out easily, you don't want to hear this, but it's kind of like an ice cream scoop, and they scoop out your everything under your arms. They took 21 lymph nodes out of my left side and 20 out of my right side, and we were waiting on the pathology on that. I was the very first patient in the brand new women's wing of that hospital. And because 23 years ago, I was so young to have breast cancer. Now 35, I mean, it's still young, but there are women in their 20s that have it now. And and I do think a lot of that is that they find it so early now, much earlier than they used to. I think that is why a lot of women are being diagnosed way earlier. Mine was already stage 3, and so it was a little further advanced, but the nurses were incredible. And I will tell you, when you have that kind of mastectomy and they take that many lymph nodes, your arms are straight out in front of you and you cannot do anything. You can't even pull a drink over to get a sip of water. I had to have somebody with me, and thank goodness my mother stayed with me. The pain was more under my arms, and I remember one of my arms hurt so much, and they said they had to pull it and stretch it so much. I complained about my arm more than I complained about losing my breast, the pain there. I don't know what they did to my arm, but it hurt for a long time. But we were waiting on the pathology, and a lot rode on that, and we just wanted it to be no lymph node involvement or just 1 or 2. And that Friday afternoon, my surgeon came in and he sat down on the side of the bed, and his name was Dr. Stiefel. And he said, "We got your pathology back." And my mom was there with me. And he said, "It's not good news." He said, "You have 6 lymph nodes involved, and anything more than 1 or 2. And it just means that it's spread further. It means that your chances of it coming back are much higher." And that really devastated me. It just seemed like every time I turned around, the news was worse. And so remember, I'm not praying at this point. I'm angry and I'm not praying. And truly, even if I had not been angry with God, I think that I wouldn't have prayed, because I couldn't even pray. I didn't know what to pray. And I told people, even though I didn't tell them I was angry with God, I did tell people I can't pray right now. And they were praying for me. And I was so grateful for that. So grateful. And so, we didn't have Facebook back then. And so there was really no way other than the phone tree to get this word out. But they let me go home that night. And I was so just devastated by that news. We all were. And I get home that night and I really struggle that night. And the next morning, it's pretty early, it's a Saturday morning, my phone rings. My mom answers it. She looks at me and she said, "It's Dr. Blumenshine, my oncologist." And I answered the phone and he said, "Tracey, it's Dr. Blumenshine." He said, "I understand you got some news yesterday, that news we didn't want to hear." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "I just want to tell you that we are going to fight this. It's not the news we wanted, but we are going to fight it. And you're young and you're healthy and you're strong. And I'll never forget that he called me on a Saturday morning to tell me that. That just sealed the deal with me and him. He was, as far as I was concerned, there was no other oncologist in the world that was ever going to be as good as he was. And so that really started our relationship. And so he told me, he said, they did put a port in. We didn't know which side to put it on because we weren't sure which side was going to need more radiation based on your lymph node involvement. Because the lumps were smaller on your left side, we put it on your left side. The lump was much bigger, and it's the first one we found. We thought that the right side would be the side where it had spread to the lymph nodes. However, that was wrong. It was the left side that it had spread to the lymph nodes. There was no lymph node involvement on the right side, but the port was already placed on the left side, so they were going to leave it there for the time being. But he said, we have discovered that you are HER2 positive as well, which was just, at the time, was devastating news. Now it's not as much because you have treatment for it, but at the time, they didn't have treatment for it. They were actually doing a trial for Herceptin. There is a movie, I'm going to get the name for y'all. There is a movie out that Harry Connick Jr. plays the doctor. And it was the doctor that discovered Herceptin for HER2 positive women. HER2 positive used to be a death sentence. It makes the cancer so aggressive. And so they were doing a clinical trial for that, but I didn't know this at the time. But it was HER2 positive. I had one tumor that was ER positive, PR negative, one that was ER, PR positive, and one that was ER, PR negative, and triple negative. So it was ER, PR, and HER2 negative. None of that is good. It was just all over the place. And I had 6 lymph nodes involved, and he said, we're going to do chemotherapy, and we'll talk more about what we're going to do when I see you at the next appointment. So I started at home recovering. I'm also going to talk a little bit about something that not many people know about. I have had a history of kidney stones, and so I've had a lot of pain medicine in my life. Kidney stones tend to take a lot of pain medicine. Have never had an issue with it. I was taking some pretty strong pain meds with this mastectomy, and I was sitting in the floor. I had received tons and tons of cards, and I was going through these cards, and I told my mom, I said, this was probably 2 weeks, I don't know, 10 days after my surgery, something like that. But my mom was still here, and I told her, I said, I need a pain pill. And she went to get it, and I realized that I didn't need a pain pill. I wasn't hurting. But I realized if I took one, it made me feel better. And I told my mom then, I said, I don't need that pain pill. I don't hurt. But when I take it, it makes me feel better. And I said, I don't want those anymore. And it really scared me. And she was like, okay. And I said, you keep those. If I tell you I need one, it's because of pain, but I don't want those around me right now. And that started something that I'll go into later. I'm very fortunate. I never struggled with addiction, but I can tell you this, your body becomes addicted to those when you've had them as much as I've had to have them. And it is hard to get off of them. You go through withdrawal when you're coming off of them, and it is not fun. And I went through an experience that it was bad. And so I realized then this is how people get addicted, and it's not good. It's not, it can be scary. So I met with my doctor and with my team. We had a chemotherapy training session, if you will. And he told me, he said, we are going to start with the CAT protocol. It is Cytoxan, adriamycin or doxorubicin, and Taxol. And the way he did it, again, he was very aggressive. And I am very thankful because I do know that God saved my life, but I do think Dr. Blumenshine also saved it. They did, when I got there, the first thing on Monday, they would start with Cytoxan. It's a tough drug. Then they hooked me up to a backpack. It was a blue backpack, navy blue. And they would slowly infuse adriamycin, doxorubicin. It's called the Red Devil. Everybody knows it as the Red Devil. It is the toughest chemotherapy you can have. Instead of me just getting it for a couple of hours, I was going to have it infused over 4 days. And then on Thursday, I would go, they would take that out, and I would get Taxol. So I was getting the CAT protocol. And it's 3 chemotherapies, all which are tough. And they're all tough chemotherapies. They told me there are some people that don't get sick on this. And if you can make it the first 24 hours, so if you can make it till Tuesday morning at like 10 or 11 o'clock, you probably won't get sick. That was my biggest fear of chemotherapy, that and losing my hair. I was 35 and I was young, and I had beautiful, thick hair, long, thick, beautiful hair. And I had done something right before I got diagnosed that I had never done before. Y'all, I just lost my extensions were brand new. And we had gone to Disney World a few months before I got diagnosed. And my hair was probably about down to here, but I had gone and had extensions put in and wore it in a ponytail. It was really long and it was already thick. And it was just something fun. And so I had done that. And so when we knew I was going to do chemotherapy, and I was, it was a for sure thing then, I was going to lose my hair, we cut my hair really short. And that was not hard. We cut it really short. But I knew one morning I was going to wake up and my hair was going to be falling out. And I was so scared of being sick. And so that first day when I walked into chemotherapy, I was crying before I walked in. I could not believe this is where I was, that I was going to start this. I had been there with Julie before, and I just couldn't believe that I was going to be hooked up like all those other people I'd seen. And still not talking to God. You would have thought by this point I was, but I was stubborn and I was mad and I wasn't talking to him. And so I went back there, and I so much wanted to be that brave, strong girl that walks in and is smiling and saying, I can do this, and I'm not scared of this, and and I wasn't. I was crying, and I was mad because I was crying. I was mad because I was scared. And I wanted these nurses to see me as this fun person who, like, they really wanted me to beat this. And I wanted them to see me as this strong Christian girl who was amazing and like superwoman. And I wasn't. I was crying. I couldn't even talk because I was crying so much. And I thought, they're going to hate me. They're not going to treat me well. And I don't know, y'all, it was bad. But the girl that was at the front desk, I will never forget her. She looked up at me and she goes, you're a year younger than me. And I said, yeah. And she said, I think you're the youngest person we have right now with breast cancer. And, like I said, back then it didn't seem to be, I don't think you saw it as much because we didn't have social media, but they got me hooked up. And I thought, I was very adamant, I was not going to think of chemotherapy as poison. I was going to think of it as, this is going to help my body. We had explained to my son, because we knew it was going to change his life. Before then, we went all the time. We were going to water parks. We went to, we just were going all the time to play groups, and he went to Mother's Day out, and we went to the park, and we did so much, and we knew it was going to change for him. And so we told him, we said, Mommy has something called cancer, and it's an illness, and I'm going to get something called chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is they're going to fight the bad cells. And he asked me at the time, he said, does chemotherapy have hands? And I said, I don't know what you mean. And he goes, well, to fight the cancer, it has to have hands so it can make fists. And so in my head, I pictured chemotherapy as like a person with these hands made of fist. And as it was started to go into my arm, I'm watching it go in. And I thought, I'm not going to think of this as poison. I'm going to think of this as this is the fighting medicine that is going to kill this cancer. And so that's what I did. But they started the chemo, and you don't know what to expect. You're sitting there, and I was just thinking, am I going to get sick immediately? Am I going to feel it? What am I going to, what am I going to do? And they had started the pre-treatment, which is Benadryl, and they gave you, at the time you got Benadryl, and which going to put me to sleep, and they gave you steroids, intravenous steroids, and the Benadryl made me really sleepy, and so I went to sleep for a little bit, but then they came in and told me, we're going to hook you up to the adriamycin, the Red Devil. And I think a lot of people call it doxorubicin now, but it's, like I said, the worst chemotherapy you can have. And so they hooked me up to it. I put my blue backpack over my shoulder, and we left. And I just was thinking on the way home, am I going to get sick? Am I going to get sick? When, I don't want to be sick. And on the way home, I told my mom, I said, I'm hungry. And she said, what do you want? I said, I want a McDonald's hamburger. And she just could not believe it. My brother, when he would get chemotherapy, afterwards, he would want a McDonald's hamburger. I have no idea why, but it's what I did not know that about Evan. So it wasn't something I was trying to copy. Mother told me then, she said, you and your brother. I said, what do you mean? She said, after Evan got done with chemo, he would want a McDonald's hamburger. So we stopped and got me a cheeseburger and some French fries, and I ate it, and we went home. And that night I did not get sick. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if I'm going to be one of the few that isn't going to get sick? And I woke up the next morning and I still wasn't sick. And about an hour away from when it was going to be 24 hours, I looked at my mom and I said, I think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to be sick. And the words had not even gotten completely out of my mouth. And I had this wave of nausea, and I got so sick. And back then, you had Kytril, Zofran, or Phenigrin. Kytril and Zofran did nothing for me. Phenigrin would take the edge off. Normally, it would knock me out, but I was so violently sick that even that wouldn't help. So they had a drug called HAB, and it was a compounded drug. And then you didn't have a lot of compounding pharmacies. I found one that would, but it was Haldol, Ativan, and Benadryl. And basically what it did was it knocked you out. And it knocked you out so hard that you wouldn't wake up from the nausea. I did have that medication in case I got sick. I was just violently ill. And so my mom said, let's do this medicine. And so I took it for the first time that day. And within, I don't know, it wasn't very long, 20 or 30 minutes, I remember thinking, I never want to take this medicine again. I don't know if I guess it's the Haldol. It is a medicine for psychiatric patients, for psychotic people. And I think it works on your brain. It made me, I cannot describe how it made me feel, but I did not want to take it again, but it did knock me out. 6 hours out cold, I was gone. When I woke up, I still had some lingering effects of that in my head. And I remember, I told my mom, I said, I don't want to take this again. However, when you start getting sick like that, you have a choice. You can either be sick or you can take this medicine, feel yuck for a little while, and go to sleep. And my mom would beg me, Tracy, please take this medicine. And it has to make you feel pretty bad if you don't want to take it when you know it's going to stop you from just being so ill. And so I would do that. I would take that when it got really bad. I went back and I got unhooked on that Thursday. They started the Taxol and they told me this Taxol is going to make you feel like you have the flu. Your body's going to ache. You're going to probably have a lot of bad indigestion, and you're going to ache all over, and you're just not going to feel good. It's like, well, I already don't feel good. So, that's, yeah, that was my start of chemotherapy. My first day of chemotherapy was February 14th, Valentine's Day. And it's funny, with my pancreatic cancer, I actually was getting chemotherapy on Valentine's Day of last year as well. But that was my first chemotherapy, and met some incredible people in there that, yeah, a lot of them did not survive. That gets you through my first chemotherapy. And yeah, we'll pick up with, I don't even know what part I'm on right now, y'all. I'm tired today and I don't feel great, so I'm not sure. But whatever part it is, I'll pick it up the next time. So I hope that you all are being blessed by this, and I hope that that in some way my story touches you. So I hope that you all make good choices in your life, and I hope that you have a great day.